Next candidate speaking is Boston City Councilor Josh Zakim. Josh is running for Secretary of State.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being here, for being committed, active Democrats. That's something we need now more than ever, not just in the red states, not just across this country, but here in Massachusetts also, because we have an opportunity in 2018 to elect progressives across the board, from the governor's office, to our legislative districts, to our city council, our town council, and our school committee seats, and that's what we need to do together. My name is Josh Zakim. I'm a Boston City Councilor. I'm running for your next Secretary of State. In my 3 terms on the Boston City Council, I've had the privilege of chairing our Civil Rights Committee, and it's through that work that I'm seeking the Secretary of State's office. On our Civil Rights Committee in Boston, we've looked at a range of issues, from housing equity, recently looking at workplace and sexual harassment protocols for city employees, immigration issues. I'm proud to have been the author of the Boston Trust Act, which is our so-called sanctuary city legislation in Boston. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of that. Proud that it's made our city safer for all, and I'm incredibly proud these days that it enrages President Trump, and he turns more orange in the face of cities like Boston and places like Massachusetts standing up for our values, because that's what we need to be doing in this day and age. But the reason I'm running for Secretary of State is because in our role on the Civil Rights Committee, folks would come to us, activists, voters, neighbors, and they'd say, hey, the bill at the State House for automatic voter registration, 13 other states have it. It means when you go to the RMV or you sign up for Mass Health and you're otherwise eligible, you're going to be registered to vote. It's worked so well in places like Oregon, where they've added hundreds of thousands of people to the rolls and increased turnout. They said to us, would you do a resolution, a hearing? Would you lend your voice to this effort? And myself and all my colleagues, all 13 of us, say, absolutely, it's a great idea. Let's do it. Nothing would happen. A few months later, same thing for same day or election day registration. 17 states and DC have election day registration, which means you can go to your polling location and register to vote. Again, hugely successful. Boost turnout. It's secure. It's not expensive. Great, let's do it. All 13 of me, my colleagues, send it up, nothing happens. And I'm thinking to myself, why in Massachusetts, in progressive Massachusetts, are we not one of the 17 states with same-day registration? Are we not one of the 17 states? That we've had a lack of leadership in the Secretary of State's office. We have not had a progressive Secretary of State who is pushing for these reforms, who is pushing to remove these unnecessary barriers to access. That's the kind of Secretary of State I want to be. That's why I'm running in this race. In 2018, Massachusetts has an opportunity to be a leader when it comes to voting rights, which I don't know about you, I think is one of the most vital civil rights battles of our generation. Where the hostile president can and should be a leader. Massachusetts, throughout our history, has led from the original resistors of the revolution to health care reform, to marriage equality, and for us to not be a leader now, for us to have nearly 700,000 eligible residents not registered to vote, for us to have drops in turnout of 30% in non-presidential years for the last 2 decades, that is unacceptable. We talk about taking back the corner office from Charlie Baker. We need to make sure we're getting everyone out to vote. We need to make sure that eligible residents are voting, that we're removing these unnecessary barriers, that we're making it easier to vote early, to participate for people who have to work on election day, or who are in school, or have child care obligations. It is time for Massachusetts to stand up once again and lead this country. We lead the country because clearly the country needs us, as they have throughout our history, but beyond that, it's better for us here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We get better government when us elected officials, and you've got some great elected officials here, and I would venture to say I've been a pretty good elected official in Boston, but we have to be held accountable. We need to make sure that people have a voice at the ballot box, that access to public records is unimpeded, so you know what's going on. And that's something the Secretary of State can do. In 2018, I'm asking for your support because it's time for us to have a progressive leader as a Massachusetts Secretary of State. Someone who has proven they'll stand up to the Trump administration's discrimination. Someone who will be a champion for a woman's right to choose. For making sure that everyone who is eligible to vote will be able to participate in our elections. This is the time. The status quo is unacceptable, even here in Massachusetts. We can and should do better. We need to be a leader on these issues. My name is Josh Zakim. I ask for your support, those of you who will be at the convention in just 2 weeks, and September 4th primary, which is the day after Labor Day. Please don't forget, I can promise you I will never schedule a primary the day after Labor Day.